Hello and welcome. April here from VisionScapes Sustainable Landscaping to talk to you about seeding basics. So it's that time of year. We're wanting to get our spring gardens going. We're thinking about gardening. And so here we're just going to talk to you today about some very general seeding basics. So this is going to apply to any kind of seed you might be sowing, whether that is garden vegetables or it's flowers or perennials. This is going to be just very basic. Okay, so let's get started. The three things you're going to want to have prepared before sitting down to get ready to seed is going to be, you're going to need seeds, you're going to need seed trays, and you need to have a growing medium or soil. So when we're talking about seeds, we're talking about seed quality. Okay, we want to make sure we have high quality seeds. So you're probably going to want to buy new seeds. You can store them if you don't use them all in one year and use them the following year, but you're going to want to make sure that you store them properly. So if you're new to gardening, you might have not known the proper storage. So if they were left out in the heat, in the moisture, in the elements, they're not going to be very good quality. So you're going to want to get new seed. Now, if you do have leftover seed, we can store them. So what is going to be required for this proper storage to keep the quality of the seed high is going to be the storage is going to be opposite what you would want for the growth. So for growth, we want warmth, we want light, and we want moisture. So for storage, we want the opposite. We want dark, we want cool, we want dry. So what I do with my seeds is I put them in the fridge. And I put them in the fridge in a double sealed Ziploc bag. That way they stay dry in the Ziploc. In the fridge they stay cool, and mostly they stay dark. So that's a very proper storage. The only seeds that are not good are, for the most part, the only seeds that are not good for storage are onion seeds. Onion seeds you want to buy every year. They just don't last. But a lot of the other seeds, garden vegetables and herbs and flowers, will last very well in a proper storage. So probably going to be buying new seeds this year. Lots of good seed, reputable seed companies you can buy from. The big box stores do carry a lot, and you can see that they are out for purchase at this time, and that's fine. You can go with those. I like to order from a seed company because I grow a lot. I'm buying a lot of seeds, so I get a little bit of a bulk discount by buying straight from a seed company instead of a third-party retailer. So you're probably familiar with some of the big names. So we've got Park Seed, we've got Burpee, as you see in the big box stores. Another good one is Johnny's. And then the one that I'm going to be working with that I'm seeding today is going to be from Fedco. And this is what their seed packet looks like. And a couple reasons why I like Fedco. There's lots of good seeds out there, but Fedco is right in the United States. They're a good family company. They have high quality seed. They have good prices. And I also like that they have the germination percentage there, and that helps me figure out my seeding rate per cell. So quality seeds, number one. Number two, we want to make sure we have some seed trays or flats ready and available, and that they are sterile. So again, sometimes we like to save the flats and use them the second year. That's fine as long as you are sterilizing them. So for myself, I clean them off with bleach in the tub because I'm doing an indoor operation here. I don't have a heated hoop house. So for proper seed trays, there's lots of different options. The big box stores really don't have a lot of options. Here in Michigan, we're fortunate because the cannabis is legal, that we have some really nice grow stores, and they have a lot of available options for seeding trays at the grow stores. If you don't have that within your state, Amazon has everything. And then also another reputable place I like to use is the Greenhouse Megastore, which is an online store. So I'll show you a couple of the seeding trays I'm going to be working with today. So today I'm going to be seeding into this 50 cell tray. So I'm seeding broccoli. I'm going to be seeding a lot of it, so I'm going to go ahead and do all 50 of these. Maybe as a home grower, this may be a little bit too much for you, and you might go with something more like these cell trays that you've seen sold in the store. You can get these at the grow store. You can get these online at the Mega Greenhouse store or on Amazon. And so you would put this in an open tray. You would fill these. They're kind of stacked in there, and that would be a fine way to do it. So I have some other sizes to show you. So this one here, which I've already filled with soil, is called a 128. Again, this is something easy you can get at the grocery store. You can get it at the Mega House Greenhouse online, or you can, I believe you can also, pretty much you can get anything on Amazon. So if that's within what you like to do. So that's trays, and again, buying new, it's safe and sterile, and then if you want to use it the second year, you're going to have to sterilize that. After a few years, they kind of start to degrade. Now, they do have LE pots or pea pots or things like that. Those are nice for certain things, in my opinion, but if you have a transplant that's a 30-day transplant, like the broccoli we're going to be seeding today, after 30 days, those pots are getting pretty mushy. But for some things, I like to direct seed that don't take very long, like beans or sunflowers. That's a really great option. It just depends on where you are in your sustainability efforts and you know, how much you want to deal with the mush of long-term transplants. Okay, so that's flat or tray. So the third thing we're going to be talking about is a proper growing medium or soil. Okay, so again, you can very easily find soils at the big box store. Definitely have lots of different professional mixes, specialty mixes at the grow store. And again, you can order it online. Now, what you want to make sure when you're seeding for germination is that there is no fertilizers in the soil. So there's a lot of different Miracle-Gro mixes at the store, and those are great, but those are for established plants that already have roots, and so they can uptake the nutrients and utilize them. With seeds, it actually will burn the seeds and they will not germinate. So we want to make sure our soil is fertilizer free. So typically that looks like getting a soil that is specifically for germination or a seed mix. Or just a soil that does not have any fertilizer in it. But usually a nice mixed soil composition is nice because you want both airspace and space for nutrients and water to be taken up. You want a nice composition. So what I use as a professional grower is probably much larger of a bag than a home grower would use. But this is something that I got at the local grow store. Okay, so this is a Pro Mix here. Pro Mix HP. And I got that at the grow store. You can also get that from the Greenhouse Mega Store online, and they do sell it in smaller sizes. That's a very large grower size. And so when you get the soil, it's going to be very dry because it ships easier. It's easier to haul. And so I do recommend to wear a mask when you're first dealing with the soil because it can be an irritant. But you're going to want to, so what I do, you're going to want to moisten it for germination. So what I do is I get a bin. So this is just like a regular bin. You can buy it at any store. And I pour the soil into the bin. And then I moisten it. And I want to get it, you want to get the soil moist enough that when you hold it, or when you squeeze it, that it doesn't fall apart, that it stays together. So this falls apart a little bit. This is actually dried out and is a little less moist than what I would like for my seeding. So you really want it to stick together. So when you squeeze it, you don't want it to be like dripping, sopping wet, but you want it to hold firm together in a nice ball when you release. So that's pretty moist, but it's getting a little bit dry. It's starting to fall apart a little bit. Okay, so those are the three things that we're going to need to get started. And again, the growing medium is something that you can get at the local store. The hardest one to get at the local store is going to be the seed trays. They just don't have as much varieties and options. If you have a grow store, that's a great option. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, I am going to be seeding into this 50 cell. Again, this applies to whatever size you're seeding. Maybe you've got these 6 cell packs and you're only doing one flat or half a flat of these. So the rest of this flat will look like, it'll be an open flat, and then these will go in here and you will have enough inserts to maybe fill the whole thing if you're doing that. And maybe you're only doing, one 6 cell with your broccoli. That's fine. This is all going to apply. I'm just doing it on a bit of a larger scale. So we're going to fill our tray. So our first thing, filling the tray. I'm going to give you a little bit more light here. Okay. And And then, so I've got my pre-moistened soil in here. Then I'm going to start filling my tray just by dumping the dirt on it and starting to press the dirt into the trays, okay? And what you want to be careful of is to make sure that the corners get filled. So I'm just going to move that out of the way for us now. And so what happens is sometimes we miss these corners, so we really want to make sure the corners get filled. So I spread it all across here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tamp this down. So I'm just going to pick up the tray and I'm going to tamp it. All right, just to make sure that the soil gets all the way down to the bottom. There's some big sticks like that one in there, and sometimes they get caught. And we don't want that. We don't want air pockets in there for our roots. And you can see that once I tamp that down, now you can see it's not quite full, so I need more soil. So I'm going to add that soil to what I lost here. Again, being very careful of making sure I fill the corners, getting it all the way full, each and every one all the ways to the corners. And then, so I can tamp it again. And the other thing I like to do is, so I've got another tray and I just lay it directly over it. And I'm not going to be pressing really hard on this because I don't want it to be overly compacted. But I just give it a nice press down here just to make sure that I'm going to have enough compaction for good seed to soil contact. And you can see I got a little bit low again in this corner, so I'm going to make sure that is full all the way to the top. But I don't want soil all over it, so I'm going to level this off so it's all the way to the top, but there's not any excess laying on it. And the reason I don't want to do that is because as soon as I water, all that soil is going to blow all over. Not only is it wasted, but depending on if you're outside in a greenhouse, that's probably fine. But right now, I'm having an indoor operation, and having dirt all over the house is not ideal. So at this point, I'm going to water this again. So for seeds, we want the medium to be very, very moist, right? So I'm going to take this to the bathtub since I'm in an indoor operation. If you're outdoors, obviously you can do this outdoors. And I'm going to water it. So I already did that. I pre-moistened this other one here just so that I don't have to walk away. But I want to talk real quick about watering. So typically with your seed, so there's no seeds in it yet, so it's not as big of a deal. But if we are using a hose that doesn't have a breaker on the end, it can just splash the soil right out. So typically you want to use something with a nice fine mesh here. So I'll show you that a little closer. So we want it to look like that to moisten this down. And even better for seeds is if you can get a mister. And again, this is something that you could probably get at a big box store, but they do sell at the Mega Greenhouse store online or a grow store. They will sell a nozzle like this that you can put on the end of your hose that is a mister, and that is going to be the best thing for your seeds, because sometimes with these nozzles, they will hit it and it will splash soil and your seeds out of here. So the mist is going to be a nice gentle mist. So for my indoor operation, so for the outdoor, I would buy that little nozzle at the end. That's a mister. And for my indoor operation, I bought this mister from Home Depot. This was about $6. And I pump it up and I get a nice fine mist spray from that. So look like that. And then I can mist my seedlings. You're going to want to do it several times a day, at least 3 times a day to begin with. Okay, so now I've got this nice and moistened. And again, I wouldn't worry about misting it until the seeds are in. So I want to make sure this is really nice and moist. So I took it to the shower. I took, the mister, the nozzle like this, and I really soaked it while being careful not to overfill it. Sometimes you have to run the water over it, let it drain, and do it again, and do it, a couple times to really get it nice and moist. And then once the seeds are in, then that's when I will start using my mister, okay? So now that we've got our flat filled with soil, we are ready to seed. So today, I am going to be seeding broccoli. Now, again, this will apply to any type of crop you are seeding, But real quick, I'm going to go over the different types of seeds and the different lengths of time it might take, okay? So, broccoli is a cool season crop. I'm here in Michigan, and so I am beginning to seed cool season crops. It's about March 15th, and so I have a cheat sheet for this. And my 30-day crops, so my cool season crops in Michigan are going to be safe to plant outside on April 15th. My warm season crops will not be safe to plant out in Michigan or 5A, zone 5A or B until June. So I'm not worried about them yet. I'm going to plant those. I'm going to seed those a little later. We'll do a video on that. But for anything I'm ready to seed outside on April 15th for the cool season crops, this is going to include my lettuce heads, my kale, my collards, my spinach, my cabbage, my Asian heads, escarole, radicchio, broccoli, cauliflower, kohlrabi, fennel, Brussels sprouts. So that's my 30-day crops. Now, if you are planting into a hoop house, that is going to be earlier. But these cool season crops are safe to plant outdoors in Michigan in zone 5B on April 15th. So it's March 15th, so I am seeding them now. Now, my tomatoes, my peppers, my basil, different things like that, they will be safe to plant on June 1st. So for seeds that take 30 days from seed, so today what we're doing, seeding it till transplant, ready to go in the garden, I will plant those 30 days out from my June date, so we'll look at that a little bit later. And some of them, like peppers and eggplant, have a little bit longer, so we'll talk about those. But today we're just going to focus on our cool season crops and our culinary herbs. So most of the culinary herbs, oregano, marjoram, not basil. Basil, again, is a warm season crop. Sage, these ones can be planted too because they can go out soon. So, planting my cool season crop takes 30 days from when I seed it to be ready to go in the garden. So now is my timing. So, my prompt here is to look into a little bit how long it takes from seeding to transplant to go in your garden to know the timing on when to seed, okay? And then the next thing we'll talk about is we want to plant one seed per cell. So for this, there's going to be 50 seeds, so one seed per cell. For the 6-pack, one seed per cell. And sometimes we get this idea that 2 is better than 1 or many is better than 1, just in case. But with seeding, that is not true. When you have more than one seed per cell, they compete with each other, and so they get longer and stretch upward, and that means the stems are weaker. So when they're shorter, they're stronger, and there's going to be all of the nutrition is going to that one plant, okay? So very important, one seed per cell. Sometimes, in very rare cases, there are exceptions to this rule. And this is where I like Fedco for the reason that they have this germination rate here, because I know at 83%, one seed per cell is going to do me just fine. Now, if I see a number that is 50% or less, maybe even 60%, then I might want to start thinking about one seed per cell, or 2 seeds per cell, 2 seeds per cell, and sometimes I even do 2 seeds in one in the next, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, depending. Maybe if I'm around 60, I'm not sure I want to do 2 in every cell. And there's certain crops that are kind of known for needing to be seeded a little bit thicker. So one of them would be lavender. Lavender almost always has a 50-60% seeding rate, so I'm going to double seed that. The other things that would break this rule are going to be most of the culinary herbs, because they, in their natural habitat, they like to grow in clumps, okay? So with my marjoram, my lavender, my oregano, my thyme, my cilantro, dill, all of these, I'm going to seed them, I just kind of, also the seeds are very, very small, so it's almost impossible to get one seed per cell. But I kind of just sprinkle them through. Maybe I'm getting 5 seeds per cell. Maybe I'm getting 7 seeds per cell. That's okay for the culinary herbs. But especially with these cool season crops we're talking about today, the brassicas, so that's going to include broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, they do not do well if seeded more than 1 seed per cell. Very important, 1 seed per cell. Spinach and lettuce will fall in that same category. Now, let's also talk about the difference between seeding into a tray like we're doing today and direct seeding into the garden. So what we're doing today is seeding for transplant, and when we're putting the seeds directly into the garden, that is called direct seeding. Now, there's a couple reasons why we like to seed into a tray. So if I were to seed my broccoli right into the ground outside, I would have to wait till April 15th to do that safely. So already I'm getting a 30-day jump start because I'm starting it indoors. And because my seedling is stronger as a 30-day transplant than it would be if I put it in the garden, it's going to be less susceptible to predator damage or environmental impacts. So it's going to be a stronger plant I'm going to put out in the garden that's going to have more resilience to sustain. So that's the big reasons there. So with some of our crops, you can do both. Direct seed, or you can seed for transplant. And the example of why you would choose to do that, so let's take chard, kale, and lettuce. Okay, so these are plants that you could find, you could go to the store, you could get in a nice leafy green mix. So if you want small leafy greens, you're going to plant that in a high density stand direct seeded into the garden so that we can just cut. Now, if you want to grow a lettuce head or a whole spinach or kale plant so you can individually harvest the larger leaves for like a bunch, now you're going to want to have transplants, and you're going to need more spacing between plants so that that plant can get to its maximum size rather than growing small in a stand, okay? So for our broccoli today, we're going to be doing 1 seed per cell based on us knowing the plant and the germination rate. We know that this is going to be ready in about 30 days. And we know once we get this seeded, we're going to need to keep it moist. Very moist up until the cotyledon, so that's the first leaf that germinates, until germination. Once you get germination, you are going to reduce the moisture level. Now, this does not mean let it dry out because the thing will die. But for seed germination, you need a very high humidity. And then for the seedling stage, once it is germinated, you need a lower humidity because the stems, the succulent part of the plants, are susceptible. So we're going to get started, and we're going to seed our broccoli. So I like to pour it in my hand. These aren't too terribly small seeds in comparison to others, but there are tools, okay? So Johnny's, if you get online and look at Johnny's, they do have a nice tool that makes it easier for beginners to do 1 seed per cell. Sometimes it can be a little tedious to do that. And it's only a few dollars. It's very, very cheap, very affordable. I've been a grower for a while, so I just like to use my hand. The other thing I'm going to caution you with is making sure you have good ergonomics. So you really want to be seeding in a location where you're not hunching over like that, right? So this is not the greatest for me, so I'm going to do a little squatting so that I'm not bending as much. So here I go seeding 1 seed per cell of my broccoli. And you can tell that you kind of got to be careful. And sometimes you get more than 1 seed per cell, and that's okay. The seed is very closely the same color of the soil, so it's not very easy to retract. And sometimes it's going to happen. You might drop a handful, and that's fine. So if you do that, when germination happens, you'll see if there's more than 1 seedling per cell, you want to thin that out. Meaning if you see that there are 5 seedlings in 1 cell, you are going to cut 4 of them out. And I know that might not feel good, but you will produce much better quality crops in that case. And if that's really hard for you and really don't like that idea, you can take a knife and you can pull it out. You'll notice there'll only be 1 little taproot, so this is a very tedious, painstaking operation here, but you can do that. And you can put it in either a cell that didn't germinate, or you can have another open flat to transplant them over to. And most of them will survive, but it's a little bit tedious, and so if you only get a 50% rate, that's fine. So I'm finishing up here all the way through to the end, or how many ever you are choosing to do. 1 seed per cell. Okay, that's my 1 seed per cell of my broccoli. Okay, so we filled our trays, we moistened it, and then we did 1 seed per cell. Our next step is we're going to cover the seed we just put down. I'm going to cover it with vermiculite. That's something I've chosen as a grower, but you can use the same soil that you put in the cells. You can use the same soil too. Okay, so I've got some vermiculite, and ideally you would have like a colander, a strainer to sprinkle this over the top. I do not have that. This is not ideal, but I'm using a 4-inch pot. You can see that there is holes on the bottom for that to come through. So this is, we makeshift a lot here as growers. So you can see this is not maybe the most efficient way to do this. It's a little bit messy, but get the idea. I get a nice coverage. Again, you want to make sure you cover those corners. So the general rule with covering your seeds is as thick as the seed is, that's how much soil you want to put over it. So as you know, a lot of these seeds are very small. So if it's a 1/4 inch seed, you're going to cover it with a 1/4 inch of soil. Now that would be a very big seed. Most of these seeds are small. Now, once I have it covered, you can see that vermiculite covers it very well. And that's the other thing, the vermiculite, I can see that it's covered. If I use regular soil, I can't see the difference in how much coverage I got. So the next step is I'm going to use my fingers, and I am going to apply pressure to really compact this. Now, I don't want to really be pushing it, just a gentle pressure to compact it down. You'll notice the soil kind of condenses down a little bit. So it goes down into that lip there. And I'm just wanting to get a nice seed to soil contact here. All right, and then I always like to wipe my hands off over the tray because sometimes your hands will pick up the seeds, and I just want to make sure they at least end up back in here. And then I just brush the vermiculite off the tray and into the cells all the way. Again, so when I'm watering, it doesn't fly all over. Probably not a big deal in an outdoor operation, but in an indoor operation, all that makes a difference, okay? So that is what that looks like there, okay? And then I'm also going to add a label to it. I like to keep very detailed records. It just allows you to analyze the information. Maybe you decide that one variety of broccoli did better than the other. You won't know that unless you have it properly labeled. And the other thing would be if I decide, maybe, this variety of broccoli needed not 30 days or 4 weeks, it needed 5 weeks. I will know that based on my record keeping. So just labeling that. We're doing Waltham broccoli today. Okay. And I also put my seeding date at the top so that I know around when these seeds are going to be ready to go into the garden. So I have it labeled 3/16, so on 4/16 I'll be looking at it and it should be looking like it's ready. Now that I've got this ready to go, I'm going to put it with my other seeds that I have stationed with a light. So these lights here that I have back here are just, you can kind of see these, they're quite heavy. These are just fluorescent lights. They are T4 lights, so they are for growing. I did buy these, or T5, these are called T5 lights. So they are a high output fluorescent lighting system. I actually found these on Marketplace or Craigslist. I don't remember which one. I got them for fairly cheap. You can buy them new. Again, you can find these things at grow stores. Now, if you want to just use your shop light at home, you can do this, okay? If you're the home gardener, you can do this. It's not going to be as ideal as the T5. The T5 is really more ideal, but you can see just one panel of these. I can put 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 to 6 flats under. And when I say flats, I mean these full 128 flats or the 6-cell flats for this open flat. So that's going to be a lot. So one light would be fine for a homeowner. So if you do end up using the regular fluorescents, that's okay. We can do that. You want to make sure that when you set up your light is directly over your plants, okay? You want it as close to the plants as possible. So if you have a bunch of space between it, those, once it germinates, they're going to get very leggy. They're going to etiolate. So those stems are going to really stretch, reaching for the sun. And what that means is they're spindly and they're weak. So you want the light as close to it as possible. So you have the light right over it. You'll notice germination. And then you want to let those plants get right up to those bulbs. And then you'll just slightly move it up, move it up, move it up, move it up. And again, now that I have this seeded, I am going to mist it before I put it in with my other seeds. I'm going to make sure I mist this. I'm going to put it in place so I don't get everything all wet in here. Okay, so I'm going to give it a really nice misting now that I'm putting it in with the seeds. You can kind of hear that. All right. And so I'm going to mist these seeds, especially with the light on it. So I get up in the morning, I turn on my light, I mist my seeds right away. I leave my lights on. You can think about turning your lights on when you notice the sun's up, and then you can turn the lights off when the sun's down and really mimic your natural environment. So first thing in the morning, I turn on the lights, I mist my plants really well. I'm going to check them midday. You do not want your seeds to dry out at all. Midday, you're going to want to water again, and then maybe 3/4 through the day, but you don't want to miss them right before going to bed and turning off the light. You really want to do most of your watering when the light is out. When the light is not out, that is when disease is most common to contribute. Not as big of a deal if they haven't germinated yet, but once they germinated, you do not want to water right before turning off your light or right before dark. You really want to make sure you're keeping it moist through the day and giving it at least an hour before the dark period to dry out a little bit. Okay? And here we are. So we covered with vermiculite, and then we watered to keep it moist all day long, right? All right, so we will check in 30 days to see what they look like, but also to start seeding some other plants. So some other plants that we might want to get started with. So here in Michigan, it is March 15th. I know I want to plant my tomatoes on June 1st. So I'm going to be seeding those next month on April 15th so that they're ready on June 1st. And that is going to include my parsley, my peppers, my tomatoes, my eggplant, and my celery. Now those are 60 days from seeding to ready to go in the garden as a transplant. My 45-day transplants are going to be basil, chard, and tomato. And then, so we've already missed the window for onions here in Michigan because those are 80 days. So I would have had to plant those in beginning to mid-February. It was a little earlier than I had my operation ready. So I didn't do that. So we've already missed the window for that. And then further down the list, we're going to have our 21-day transplants, which are going to be the cucumber, squash, muskmelon, and watermelon. So in May, we will be seeding those. And then our beans are the ones that take the least longest. And again, beans is something you could either direct seed in the garden or you could transplant. It depends. I like to do both. I direct seed some, and then I also, I like to do transplants because I want to get the beans in the garden and get them growing as fast as possible so I can get my beans coming in and I can start eating those. So I do like to start with transplant into the garden on that June 1st date that I can plant. And then after that, then I direct seed to have my successions of beans coming in because then it's warm enough to seed outside. And so I'll show you what my chart looks like. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Just give you a couple of minutes to decide, what crops you might need here. And then, so this tells you the days to transplant. So from when we seed it here today, how long it takes till it'll be ready to go in the garden. This does not tell you when in your location it is safe to plant that crop. So again, I can only speak for Michigan here, or Zone 5AB, that we plant cool season crops on April 15th, and it is safe for warm season crops after the frost-free date on June 1st. Of course, it flexes because the weather can always be different, especially here in Michigan. Now, one more thing I want to tell you before I wrap this up is that in 30 days, when these seeds are ready to go in the garden, I've kept them really moist up until germination, and then I've watered them appropriately, not overwater them, backing off the water a little bit. But before they go out in the garden, so in about 3 weeks, 1 week before they're ready to go in the garden, I like to fertilize them one time in the trays before they go in the garden, just to make sure that I get nice roots and that they're going to be strong and ready to go in the garden. Now, if you have transplants that have weak roots and you try to pull it out, and then the soil is crumbling and it's just not a good transplant, it's not going to work well for you. So I like to fertilize once before it goes out at about week 3. And what I like to use as an organic gardener is fish emulsion. Now, if you've ever used this, it smells very bad, but it's really good stuff. Again, you can get this at the grocery store. You can even get this now at the big box store with the popularity of organic gardening. I found some at Walmart recently, Alaska fish emulsion. I think it was $12 for 12 ounces, which is enough for the home gardener. But there's lots of other fertilizers that you can feel free to use depending on how you like to garden. For me as an organic gardener, that's a great option. So I hope that this information was helpful today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I will be continuing to put out more content as I go through the progression of my seeding here. And so we'll see you in about 3 weeks to do some fertilizing of the fish emulsion. We'll see you in 4 weeks to show you what the transplants look like and when we begin to seed our warm season crops. So stay tuned for more content. Thanks for joining me today. April from VisionScapes, Sustainable Landscape. And you can contact us through our website, www.mivisionscapes.com. Happy spring!